12 years. Deputy Mayor.
I have an amendment, especially in light of reducing the number of years, because that does affect the number of dollars, and I think there's some really important street projects, as well as, of course, the zoo and the expo center that were high priorities for many of the people who spoke. I would propose that we remove the bikeways and trailways from this resolution. That in no way says I don't support bikeways and trailways, but the number of people in my district don't want to see the sales tax going towards that. They think it should be private funds and grants and other ways of raising the dollars for those, as opposed to when we have a limited amount of money and such a great need for our infrastructure, as well as probably the zoo and the expo center. That's the reason for the motion.
So I'm going to interpret that you're moving to eliminate lines 45 and 46, in
Yes.
a sense, that quality of life item. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. We're back on the resolution as amended. Mr. Manspeaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to amend line 27 by striking the phrase downtown development. Some of you may recall, I believe it was last year, a request was made to the JETO board to provide the funding for the grant of $100,000 for downtown building matching funds. The argument that was made as to why those funds shouldn't come from our economic development dollars were that downtown development was not economic development as charged by the JETO organization. Adding the phrase downtown development to this resolution will open that door so that folks are able to come and petition JETO for money that will invest in downtown development. Seeing 2.6 million in private funds and upwards of 6 to 8 million in city funds in terms of infrastructure being spent in downtown Topeka, I really don't want to open the door for a funnel, if you will, of funds to come from economic development directly to downtown from the taxpayer. I would rather see them continue to come in the manner that they have, so that we don't spend an exorbitant amount of money in downtown Topeka. I would make that motion to amend line 27 by striking downtown development.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Seeing none, motion dies for lack of a second. We have before us the resolution with one amendment, which is the resolution as amended with that one amendment. Are there other amendments or discussion? Mrs. Hiller.
I had, in terms of the list of streets, which run from line 30 to 40, the staff originally proposed a list, and when I brought something forward last week, I simply used the staff's original proposed list. But it's been changed in this list on line 31, 32, and 35, and it now says expansion of 12th Street, expansion of Huntoon, and expansion of Topeka Boulevard. I sent in a request. I wasn't aware we had any plans to expand any of those three, and I sent in a request in advance and didn't get an answer yet. I'm not comfortable. The list was fine, but without an answer on those.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, could you have someone perhaps address that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Whitaker to step forward and explain what was meant by that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Hiller, the expansion, when we listed, I just listed the projects, the expansion would be related to if we added sidewalks, et cetera, which we can do under a county half-cent sales tax. We weren't going to widen the roads. It would be if we, when we, I guess the word expansion was used, it was to utilize, more for sidewalks, those type things that we can add, which we can't do under the half-cent sales, under the city half-cent sales tax.
Did that, Mrs. Hiller, is that?
That, I appreciate the explanation. I think other people will be confused by that as well. So really, the only reason for the 3 was just to put sidewalks? That's all? Okay.
I
Well,
would be,
If I could add also, to me, those 2 streets are very challenging. You know, they're narrow, there's some almost move back and forth, and I would assume there would be some other intersections that need to be improved, but, and again, this, I don't know if this is going on the ballot in this manner. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah,
would you-
thank you, and Mr. Mayor and Doug, for addressing that. I don't think that it's necessary to have the expansion in there, and so I think we were just trying to clarify. So in terms of the ballot, if you wanted to remove those particular words and just list the streets to avoid confusion, that would be fine.
I would move to, then, thank you for that, to remove the words expansion of from lines 31, 32, and 35.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, on the one I'm looking at, it's lines 32, 33, and 36. But I think we will all agree that it's the extension of whichever
Somehow the lines changed, I mean.
would be out. I
We
know.
got this
We
last
got
week,
the,
I think, so.
we're together on that. It's
Yes.
been moved and seconded to remove extension of for 12th Street, Huntoon, and Topeka Boulevard. if you
Was
put it
there
that way.
was there a second?
Yes,
Or did
I'm
I-
sorry, Mrs. Ortiz
Oh, sorry.
seconded.
Thank you.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 7, Ms. Ortiz? Okay, we have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. Is there other discussion or amendments? We have the resolution, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hiller.
That would be that we would add a new line 50, or whatever the appropriate line is on people's copies. That would say that all items be cash. I wasn't quite sure how to phrase it, but all items, all projects be budgeted as cash.
Okay, I'm looking to see if how we legally is the best way to handle that.
I'm trying to think of, I'm thinking process, that what we're doing is suggesting what would be on the ballot.
Correct.
We could have, you know, if it was the policy of the council that they were only gonna do cash projects related to this, that could be the policy of the council. I'm not sure if this is the correct document for that to be, are you thinking of that being a ballot question, or what?
I think it's critical in terms of the decision of how many projects can be done, the size of the projects, and how many years the extension of the sales tax would take. I mean, to do the math on it, as I shared last time, the list that was pretty much this list last time could be done in 12 years with cash and would have taken 20 years if the construction projects were bonded. That's a pretty big difference.
See, I guess I have, again, I almost think that's an interlocal agreement issue rather than a ballot issue, but if you can make the motion and you make, and if it's passed. You went to Mr. Colson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, I think what she's attempting to do is that no proceeds from the tax could be used for debt issuance or the interest rates associated with that. We certainly couldn't stop a body from debt service. You just want, as an example, if you spent $25 million on something, you don't want to be charged $45 million or $40 million for the overall fully loaded. So I think that's what she's attempting to say.
So you would make that in a form of a motion and to say it in that manner. Is that what you're agreeing to?
That would be, if that's a better way to say it, that no proceeds from the tax would be used for, what
For
did you say?
debt issuance or interest, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Would be used for debt issuance or interest. Thank you.
Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. We have the resolution before us with 2 amendments. Is there discussion? Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have an amendment. I have a question for the city manager or the city attorney, whichever one wishes to answer this. Assuming this resolution passes with the amendments that have been made, at some point you sit down with the county commission and you start projecting or doing the pro forma as to how much this half-cent countywide sales tax is going to generate for the next 12 years. You sit down, you start figuring out how much it's going to cost to do the various infrastructure improvements, the 1/3 to Eco-Devo. Expo Center comes forth with what it feels it needs. Topeka Zoo comes forth with what it feels it needs. Somebody comes forth to implement the bikeways and walking trails master plan, and you realize you don't have enough money. What gets cut? What's the thought process by which you go back and say, we're going to cut? What doesn't get funded?
Well, if I could add in the last one, it said the list of the priorities by which they would be the streets, and we would do them as long as there was money. I mean, there was something in the interlocal agreement that stated that. I mean, I think the economic development money was there, county roads, bridges were there, definite, and the only other thing was streets. And they started at the top and said, in the interlocal agreement, we'll fund them until we run out of money, if that's the case. So, I mean, that was how it was done the last time.
And yes, that is how it was done the last time, that essentially the ballot question is going to say the countywide retailers half-cent sales tax can be spent on these issues. You're going to find the priorities in the interlocal agreement, and then once you're out of money, and those ones that don't get addressed, don't get addressed.
I mean, it would be in the interlocal agreement.
Yeah.
How this issue would be handled, I would think.
Yes.
It would have to be. We have a major recession, we go down, so something wouldn't be done.
So at this point, we don't know what those priorities would be.
And if I may,
Yes.
part of the reason we don't know what the priorities are, because we don't know what's going to be on the ballot yet. I mean, there has to be some agreement of what's going to be the ballot question. The county can put whatever they want on the ballot, and then if this body agrees or doesn't agree, then there will be the back and forth on the interlocal agreement.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer as best we can? Yeah. Mr. Schmidt?
This is also for legal. Since this says that on line 21, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Topeka, Kansas, that the county commissioners consider the following items. This has no binding action on us. They can essentially ignore everything that we say, and we could agree to it at a later date or disagree to it if they come back with studies that show us, they have a better option for some of these projects.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. None of these things are legally binding in any way that we're recommending.
No, Councilman.
Thank you.
That is correct. Mrs. Schwartz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On line 48, it says that the election will be held in spring of 2015. I know we discussed the idea of it being held in November or in spring of 2015, and the idea that there is a bigger voter turnout. I didn't understand if this was because of cost or why the spring of 2015 was put in the resolution.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Schwartz. Once again, we sort of picked up what the strongest sentiment was last week. We did do some research on the spring of 2015 ballot. There is no incremental cost to either us or the county, and it would be a countywide election at that particular moment. That's why it was recommended. Certainly, we can bring forward to the county whatever they want. I know that they're they are aware that that is, they've read this and they understand, and I think that they will take whatever action that they think is appropriate, but they have in all of their conversations been very clear that they want to have an agreement with the city as they go forward so that we don't find ourselves fighting later on.
Follow-up question. So is there a cost to having it on the November ballot?
Mayor, Councilmember Schwartz, I'm sorry, I probably answered a question different than what you answered. I apologize for that. There is no cost. The concern, and when there's a discussion of cost of a November ballot, is because it is such a much larger election with the gubernatorial race and everything else that's happening, it would be very difficult to advertise effectively and promote this particular issue, and it could get lost in the noise of that pollution, and I don't know that this is true, but even in terms of the ability to purchase advertising would be fairly difficult compared to the other timeframes that were suggested.
One more follow-up. So we know that the November election is a much larger turnout than the April elections. Do we know what the difference of the voter turnout is in November versus April? And that's my final follow-up, because it will be up to the county commissioners to determine when it's going to be on the ballot. But have we, I mean, when you're trying to get citizen input and you're asking for a ballot question, the more voters that you have turn out, you're going to get a better input of what you're putting out there for a vote.
Mayor, Councilmember Schwartz, I would agree with your statement right there. I do not know. We could certainly look at some of the historical turnouts from the other elections, and we will do that and send it to the council this week.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We have a resolution before us with two amendments. That have been amended with two. Any other discussion? Amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution as amended, vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 7 yes and Mr. Harmon voting no.
7 having voted in favor, the resolution on retail sales tax is adopted. We'll proceed to item D, ordinance pertaining to bicycle parking regulations.
D is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson, amending City of Topeka Code Sections 18-240-010, 18-240-020, and 18-240-040, and specifically repealing said original sections, all concerning bike parking.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The approval would update the city zoning regulations to require bike parking for new development. Mr. Fyander is available to present on this item and also answer any questions.
Mr. Fyander.
Thank you. As mentioned, approval would update the zoning code to require bike parking in addition to vehicle parking with new development. This, for those of you interested in a little bit of the details, 5% of the required car parking would be mandated for bike parking. The rack, and this is, we're talking about bike racks. This is, in essence, an inverted U holds 2 bikes. And so if you, probably a couple $100 to install. It went through the Plan Commission and some of the development community to get feedback on this. It was, it came out with support. This is looked at as actually several benefits that come out of this. 3 main things. One is, you know, as we add miles of bike ways and we actually get into bike sharing, we need bike parking at the end of our destinations. This will essentially implement the Bikeways Master Plan and begin to build that network, Bikeways network. Better position Topeka to be nationally recognized as a bicycle-friendly community. And it also has an allowance here for the developer who wants to substitute out bike parking or substitute out car parking for bike parking. This has the added benefit, since you can fit 12 bikes for 1 car space, would lower parking lot construction costs, stormwater runoff costs, and we'd end up with less asphalt in the parking lot. So came through the planning commission, as I mentioned, and also had recommendation of approval from the Bikeways Advisory Committee. We do recommend approval of the ordinance.
Are there questions for Mr. Feinder? Mr. Schmidt?
Move to approve.
Mr. Schmidt moves to approve. Mr. Elisla seconds. We have one person who is signed to speak on this, and we will, Mr. Andy Gray. Fry.
Very close.
There was an Andy Gray, yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you again for supporting bicycles this evening. I've been concerned with bike racks ever since we've been working on the bikeways and the development of that sort of thing. I've been involved in kind of surveying how many bike racks there are currently in the city. There's probably 80 to 90 bike racks between schools and different businesses and that sort of thing. We have a map of all those. I've been involved with the Topeka Community Cycle Project, where we've worked to develop a program where businesses or entities can purchase bike racks at an affordable rate that are made locally. We've partnered with the Washburn Institute of Technology, as well as now the Kansas Correctional Industries, in finding solutions that are significantly cheaper than buying them commercially. Let's see. So basically, this ordinance offers the potential for a secure end goal for users that will ride on the bikeways or use the bike share or just their personal bike. The ordinance offers the ability for a multiplier of the economic impacts that a car spot might have. Bikes Belong, which is a national cycling advocacy group, estimates that a car parking spot costs roughly $15,000 to construct, while a bike rack obviously costs more like $150 to $200. And in addition to that, in every parking spot, rather than one vehicle, you can put 8 to 10 vehicles, and obviously that adds up. Finally, this ordinance makes sense from a technical perspective in that they've tried to cover all the bases. There's the spacing standard pulled from the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals. There's an engineering lighting standard to give a safe environment for people to park in at night of at least 1 foot candle. And lastly, the rack designs they've chosen are current industry standards that make a point not to damage the bicycles and offer a secure place to lock up. In summation, this is obviously a shift in how parking is planned and required in Topeka, and this is a movement that's taking place across the country. So as Henry David Thoreau said, in kind of comparison, never look back unless you were planning to go that way. So I would hope that we do the same with bicycle parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andy Fry. I apologize for the incorrect statement of your name. We have a motion and a second before us on this ordinance. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved, adopted. Applications, I do not believe there are any.
No, there are no applications this
Okay,
evening.
that completes our action items for this evening. We move to the non-action items. The first one is a discussion of the capital improvement program for utility fund projects. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Whitaker to come forward and present information on the capital improvement plan. Specifically, this is a continuation of the meeting that we had last week, and we're going to be talking about utility funds. I believe it's Mr. Whitaker. I believe it's Mr.
We
Whitaker.
have a group of staff coming forward.
All right.
Maybe after this one, still, we might take a break. 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
I will say next year we'll figure out a way to do this where it's not at the end of these meetings, and
It's good.
his-
We're fine.
this is painful for you.
No.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm going to be kicking this off just to keep a consistent face for opening all of the budget messages. But certainly, as all of this relates to utility projects, I will hand it over to Mr. Whitaker here in a minute to speak about all of the details. Just to begin, this is the continued series of us talking about all of the capital improvement projects. So last week we talked about the GO bond and the other funds, which is street sales tax and the federal funding. And so tonight we want to focus on utility fund projects, which is the wastewater, the stormwater, and the water projects. So these are a few slides I just put in here just as another point of reference. These are repeated from last week and also available in the CIP book. Just wanted to reiterate the importance of our utility projects. If you're looking at our types of projects in the CIP, they make up 62% of our projects. So this is a very important conversation to be having. In addition, for our funding sources, revenue bonds and cash, which both we'll be talking about tonight, makes up a very large portion of our total CIP as well. So just to put it all into perspective for you. That is all the introduction we have, so I will turn it over now to go through the individual projects.
Okay, Mr. Whitaker, and that is, we are then on page,
Be on page 34.
thank
Mr.
you,
Mayor.
34
Yes.
of our booklet.
Page 34 of the booklet. We will start with the wastewater projects. The first one, I'll go through these quickly and just stop me if you have questions. First one is basically the wastewater replacement program. That is the annual system maintenance where we're either cleaning or relining or replacing sewer mains throughout the city as needed. This is the portion that we're emphasizing that we go to as cash funded, because this is something that we would do every year, and that's why it's listed for 15 through 19. So any questions on that?
Any questions? Okay.
Okay. The next project is the Oakland wastewater treatment solids handling. This is earlier this year in 2014, you approved the study to look at this. This basically is the solids handling, which is a major function process at the wastewater plant, the Oakland plant, and also the North Topeka plant, is we're studying to see what we can do we produce a lot of methane, et cetera, through that process. How could we use that to be a little more, sustainable in our processes, and also possibly reduce costs by using that towards energy or something? And so this basically is the next phase of that. The study would come back with a recommendation, and then this would be the funds to move forward to work with that.
Okay, any questions? Ms. Hiller?
Could we back up one just for a moment? Scrambling a little bit, but the wastewater replacement program that you spoke of first,
Yes.
1.5 million a year, or goes up, I guess, each year?
Yes.
I'm looking at page 34. I thought you said that would be cash. Did I hear you say that?
This would be this is the area that we would emphasize cash for. I think we listed all of that in here, not knowing where we might go with the rates, et cetera, but this would be the one that we would emphasize that we would use cash first.
I see. Okay, well, they don't match. You've got 1.5 million a year in the book, and it escalates on the
It's supposed to with the
chart.
potential rates that we are looking for. This would allow us to start building that cash, to use cash to replace sewer lines or reline. We'd probably do more relining, on sewer lines.
Great. Well, that sounds good to me. I just was confused. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see.
The Oakland, we're okay. We'll go on to CSO, page 36. Let me emphasize. CSO number 3, the Oakland capacity evaluation. This is CSO 3, which, real quick, CSO is combined sewer overflow, and basically that's where our stormwater and sewer systems are combined, and we have several in the older sections of the city. This is to look at the Ash Street pump station, which is a major pump station over on the east side of town that basically pushes flow into the Oakland wastewater treatment plant. We want to evaluate, this project here would evaluate that large force main, et cetera, that goes over to see what the limitations are on that. And there's another project further down that would identify, because what we're trying to do is to minimize that CSO. The overflow that would actually go out into the river. And so we're trying to take a look at that and moving forward with these projects to try to eliminate that, because we have to, under regulatory, we know we need to be looking at that.
Okay, questions? Go ahead.
The next one is the Adams Street cleaning and inspection, and that's basically the Adams Street interceptor. It is a large brick, egg-shaped sewer line. So it's an older main. I think it's almost 10 foot tall, possibly. It's a huge pipe. With this process here is we want to clean it, inspect it, TV it, and and line it, and also at the same time try to identify all of where the stormwater inlets, stormwater connections are coming into this major sewer line. And that would be the process, that would be what this whole project would be, is to, again, preserve it and repair it, because obviously it needs to be maintained. It's quite a large line if we had to replace it.
Okay. So those are all in 2015. Now we go to 2016.
2016. It's page 38, the South Kansas Pump Station, this is phase 2. Phase 1, Kansas Pump Stations is out there just past the little Potwin Pump Station, if you're familiar with that, along I-70, just west of that. We're already doing some repiping out there and rehabilitation of that large, what we call the South Kansas Pump Station. This would be the next phase of it, in where we're going to basically tie the old Potwin Pump Station into that major pump station, and then we'd be able to actually eliminate all of the pumps, et cetera, at the Potwin Pump Station, and just basically make it a wet well and handle the flow that way. This also will help us to reduce another CSO, which is CSO number 5, and help us with capacity, that we can send it more through the piping rather than having the overflow out into and I don't know the stream over there. I know it's not direct into the river,
No.
but in that area.
Right,
So.
I'm familiar with it, yes.
So.
Mrs. Hiller?
A question on this one and the ones before it, like this one says Bartlett and West, 2008. You get PEC on the two prior. Is the engineering done on these? I know they've bounced in and out of the CIP over the years.
This one, since it's phase 2, Bartlett and West was the engineer on phase 1.
Okay.
So they were able to look at that. I mean, what's under construction right now was done by Bartlett and West.
I see.
So.
And is like the two PEC ones immediately before, is that engineering done also?
The engineering, I'm not sure all of the engineering is done. They did a study for us
I see.
on the overall system, and so we're using PEC or Bartlett and West, recommendations, as they did a study for us in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the
This
Edworks generator at Oakland.
Yes, page 39. This is an operational enhancement, and where we're going with that is, again, I talked about the Ash Street Pump Station. It's a force main. It pushes everything to the Oakland plant. This is something that we've put into the CIP just as more of, to make sure we stay in compliance. What has happened is we've had a power failure at the plant, at the headworks, and the Ash Street Pump Station is still pumping away, and then all of a sudden we have an overflow at the facility. We're looking at backup generation to make sure we can keep the pumps and everything going, because the headworks is obviously just what it is. It's the headworks. It's where everything starts when it comes into the plant, and if things are shut down, it can jam things up real quickly. So that's what we're looking at on that
Good.
one.
Okay. Proceed.
Okay, the next one, page 40, the Adams Street Interceptor Rehabilitation. I mentioned where we were going to clean it, line it. That's the large egg-shaped brick one. This would be the next phase on that, where we would go in and identify how can we separate the stormwater from the wastewater to try to minimize that CSO so that we don't have that all combined flow coming down. And I'll just make note, when we get to the stormwater projects, there's a stormwater project that would obviously address the stormwater side to separate that flow.
Okay, see,
Next,
we're
page
into-
41.
we're into 2017.
Yes, thank you. The lining repair, this is at the North Topeka plant and Wanamaker pump stations. This is just, we're rehabilitating the protective lining of the wet well and also the large basins that are at the pump station. This is just more of kind of like preventive maintenance. If we do something to preserve that, we extend the life of it rather than having to just start over and obviously spend a lot more money trying to, you know, do replacement. So this is just kind of rehabilitating those existing wells and moving forward, which is a normal process within wastewater. It's very easily done in the wet wells, et cetera.
Okay, go ahead.
The next one on page 42, the North Topeka solids handling. This is an operational improvement issue. There's a breach which is allowing, as it says, liquid and wastewater sludge to enter into the cavity walls. We need to do something to repair that wall, and obviously it's a structural integrity point, so it would be a more major, that would be also a long-lasting repair.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
The next is, now we're in 2018. These would just be the planned projects out there. This is not part of what we call the CIB. This is the East Side Interceptor and combined overflow. I told you in one of the projects back in 15 was we were going to analyze the Ash Street pump station and that force main going over to Oakland. What happens is that force main gets quite overwhelmed, for lack of a better term. This would put a secondary pipe in that would allow us then to get all of the flow. We wouldn't kind of restrict flow, which then if we restrict it, that's when we have the overflow. This would be an additional line that would allow us to get all of the flow to the Oakland treatment plant and be able to handle it there. And that would be a result of that earlier project that identified what we really need.
All right.
Okay, page 44, North Topeka nutrient removal. This is just to rehabilitate and update the treatment. This is the North Topeka plant, including we're required now to do nutrient removal, and this is coming through on our NPDES permit, which is issued by KDHE. The study was completed in 2012. It's noted there. This is just making those, what the study recommends. We're not under a real pressure to do that, so we listed it as an 18 project rather than it's not something we just immediately need to go do, but we want to keep it obviously marked in the CIP for future years.
Okay.
Page 45, the Oakland wastewater treatment plant UV expansion. One of the last things you do with wastewater is, as it is finally coming and getting ready to go to your outflow into the river or stream, wherever it goes, is it will run through a UV type treatment. KDHE is recommending that due to the wet weather flows where we get additional, we get quite an additional during rains and like that, they would like us to increase the amount, the capability or the capacity that we can do with UV. So again, we've put this out as a 2019 project. It's something we're still identifying with them, but it is something they're recommending to us.
Okay. Mrs. Hiller?
An overall question, you're at kind of a transition point. Could you talk a little bit about the move to recommend a 3-year capital improvement budget rather than 2, which has been done before?
What we're looking on the CIB, yes. The capital improvement budget, the reason we were recommending a 3 is we were limited with a 2 before, is we're trying to look at, we would do design in the first year. Utility companies are getting a little more, because of budgetary issues out there, utility companies do not like to do anything to move, and I'm not talking our own, I'm talking the, the AT&Ts, all of those. They do not like to do anything until they have completed plans. So this kind of added another year to the process so that we're not, you know, we got to get design done, get those, and buy right-of-way. We have to get the right-of-way purchased if we're doing something on a street project. This was mainly there. Then you would add get the utilities out there in the second year so that they get all relocated. Then we would go out and start the road project rather than trying to jam them into a 2-year process was the thought behind that.
But you're using the 3 years for the utility projects as well?
Yes, from that standpoint, and also just allowing from a planning standpoint, I think we did it as, since we were doing a 3-year CIB, we were doing it for all projects.
Okay.
That's what we had presented.
I think that
Okay.
you've taken care of our wastewater through 2019, right?
Yes.
All right.
Now go to stormwater.
We're now going to stormwater.
There, I did it right this time. There's the next screen, okay. This first one is the storm conveyance. Again, this is the annual system maintenance. And what I'm saying there is where we're identifying that we need to, you know, we've got storm sewers that are collapsing, same thing as we did with, you know, sewer or water lines that are happening. This is just taking care of those deficiencies that we've identified out there as we TV lines, we need to replace inlets, et cetera. So that's what this process is here. And again, this is, well, basic in stormwater, we try to, you know, again, would be funded through cash. This is our ongoing annual maintenance that we need to do each year.
Okay? I'm sorry, Mr. Manspeaker.
What's the total amount for 2014 on storm conveyance? It's not up there, but are we doing that currently to the tune of $2.5 million?
We are, let me ask, I'm not sure on the exact amount, if I could just check. 2 million? Okay. 2 million, we've got $2 million identified for 2014.
And then you may or may not know the answer to this. How do we prioritize which storm inlets and things like that are going to be replaced?
Well, 2 ways. One is we try to follow the street projects. So if we're working a street project, again, just like we try with water lines or, you know, mainly water lines and like that, if they're involved with a street project we're doing, we would analyze the storm sewer for that and make sure if we need to do upgrades. Again, with concrete pipe, we don't necessarily have to replace it. Maybe we can line it, you know, et cetera, but we do want to analyze it. And then the other way, the second item we would do is we do go out and try to TV, just like we do our sewer lines, TV our stormwater lines, and identify those areas that, you know, we've got collapse or issues, or, you know, we've got, you know, complaints are coming in and we realize something has happened underground and we go and check those areas out.
So just a follow-up, if I may. So currently, if we have collapsed inlets and things like that, those are problems that we are handling on a day-to-day basis?
We are addressing those. Some of those may be maintenance, but then we may do, you know, if we can repair or line, we will try to do that under maintenance. But if we have to do a more major repair, we would also look at those. But again, we tie those, the first priority is to tie it in with any street project that we have going on.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. City Park, is that the
Yes,
next one?
page 47. This is a pump station that basically is related to the levee system. Along the levee, it's an older, as I think it's noted in here, 1956 system. It needs to be upgraded and the equipment needs to be repaired. Again, what usually happens is when we have to close the levees, what you call the big flap gates that go into the river, if you've got a flood situation, the flap gate closes, obviously all of the stormwater is stopped. Well, the pumping stations is to get it over the levee and into the river. So this is one of those that it just needs an upgrade, and we're looking at that, and that's
Okay.
the important thing.
Good. Next.
Page 48. This is the infamous WARDA project, and where we're at, again, we're putting this is our portion of that $25 million project. We are putting it in the CIP to get a placeholder in there for 2016. It is in committee, as when we were just in DC here a couple of weeks ago. It is in the joint committee. It could get passed this year. If it gets passed this year, then it obviously would go for appropriation. if it gets, the funds are appropriated, and for the, say, 15-year, we probably, then the Corps' got to finish their design, we would be able to move into 2016 with the project. We need to earmark the money, because if we don't have our matching funds, they obviously could say, well, Topeka's not interested, and just move on to the next city. So that's the purpose. We're just, again, trying to see where it's at. It, you know, more than likely won't be 16, but we need to make sure, you know, I'll think positive, and it is, but we want to move, you know, that's why we're putting it in there, so.
Okay, all right, Mrs. Hiller.
We already have half of that money, right?
Yes,
Already
we've
saved
put
up?
some of it aside, yes.
Well, I'm concerned because the page 48 makes it look like we're gonna borrow all of it, and I wanted to.
I think we did that just in, you know, it's there as an option to go either way, but we would go cash first. You know. The other is, I think as you remember, on a couple of other projects is we have set that money aside, but then if it just keeps sitting there, do we go borrow money while we got this cash sitting over here? You know, we're trying to, how do we manage our cash going forward? You know, and utilize it versus just paying interest while we think the word is gonna come some year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good. Levies.
Next item is levy repairs replacement program. This is a combination, this is, as you remember, I came in, they're doing the FEMA recertification of the levees, which would get us for flood insurance, flood protection, you know, along, down in the areas along the river in the levee system. This is just, again, we're earmarking some money because we should have by 16, we should have our complete study done for the levee recertification. And then also there are some deficiencies that were not design deficiencies of the original levees that the Corps has identified, and so we need to take that they will not, and the Corps will not participate in that. So we need to be able to do those plus the FEMA recertification. We don't know as it will be anywhere. We just tried to, this is a budgetary number estimate right now. Again, once we have all of the findings, then we'd be able to actually come up with an actual number. But again, we know it's important to get that FEMA certification on the levee because of what it ties in with the whole flood insurance issue.
Okay.
Next is, I'm back to the Adams Street interceptor again. This is the, as I mentioned under the sanitary side, we're trying to eliminate that CSO and separate the two. This would be the stormwater portion of it, where we would get the stormwater over into its own piping system so that stormwater can go to the river. We want the sanitary, obviously, to go to the Oakland treatment plant would be our main thing. So that's this piece of it. And then the last one, it's called the Heartland Park Best Management Practices out in 18. It had been identified through our NPDS permit for stormwater that we needed to do something as far as improving the quality of our runoff into the, and now probably the Wakarusa River.
Right.
And so that's what, and it's down in that area. That it's not actually at Heartland Park, it's just down in that area. And and we've just earmarked it again for 18. It's something that, again, we're not being told we need to do it. We've just been told that, you know, we should do it, and we want to be prepared and just have it in our CIP.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hiller?
2 years ago, roughly, when we were working on Kansas Avenue, we put into the CIP, staff did, a stormwater system that went, the best I can recall, east on 8th Street from downtown and took stormwater out to the river. And there was discussion then that it was a high priority. I want to say it was about $2.5 million, and that it was because even if we did everything on Kansas Avenue, water might back up. Has that been resolved? Is that this project we just looked at?
No, that is a project, and we're tied in with, that one has been looked at. We've looked at on Kansas Avenue if we can increase our storage, you know, down Kansas Avenue. And then 8th Street, and I'll do as best as I can tell. I don't have all the technical knowledge on it, but it then goes down and under I-70. We are already working with the Polk Quincy Viaduct, et cetera, like that, working with KDOT so that we can tie together and actually get all that changed when, you know, the Polk Quincy comes through, because it goes under I-70. And so obviously, we're not gonna be able to just trench across I-70 without, you know, causing some real issues. So that we're trying to work together with KDOT on that, and that way we could actually share some costs going through there.
That's great, and you think the extra storage will alleviate issues downtown?
Yeah, we do know there's a choke point on there, and we may have to look some at 8th Street, but we haven't lost track of it, but we are, again, working, because there also goes on down under the I-70, you know, on out to wherever it goes.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, we're gonna move on. That's the end of the stormwater.
Stormwater, now we're to water.
Water, Public Works, Water Fund.
Okay. Again, the first one, water main replacement, that is again the annual system maintenance where we're replacing water lines. And what we're, you know, looking at is obviously increasing that each, and again, going towards cash funded projects.
Okay, next.
The next item, this is with where we are, the Seward Avenue project is coming up that you know, is under the streetscape and et cetera that is going on over there in the Oakland area. And this would be, there is under the, you remember we did several weeks ago, we did the master water plan, and we had all those drawings with all those pieces that had to go in there. This is a piece of the transmission that goes under that road, and so obviously we're showing it as 15. It's not that we wanted to do it that fast, but since we're doing the road, we need to get the transmission line under that road. So that's what this project is.
Okay.
Next item is, and let me back up and let me just, I forgot to make a statement. There's 3 key projects in water, or types of projects in water. There's the replacement that I talked about. There's then the street projects to make sure we replace water lines under brand new streets so that we don't, you know, obviously do a lot of damage. And then there's the master water plan. And a lot of what's in here, this list is putting that water plan together through 2019, the overall master plan for the water system. So let's move to page 54. The south elevated tank, again, this is part of that master plan, again, for trying to solve all of the pressure issues of trying to get around to the east side for the east and southern zones. And so this is just a piece of that goes into that overall master plan.
Okay, go ahead.
The next project on page 55 that's 37th Street. That's the water line. Again, this project is to make sure that we replace the water line under phase 1 of the 37th Street project there from Burlingame to Gage. Then the next page 56, that's the California project. It says 33rd to 41st. I know we've had the conversation that we only get the 37th with the street, and but the water line needs to continue on down to 41st. Again, since we need to go 33rd to 37th to keep up with the road project, it makes sense. It's only 4 blocks more. We could get a better cost per foot on the line. So that's why it goes all the way to 41st. But again, with a road project. The next item on page 57 is just a disinfection modification. We're again putting phase 1 and some dollars in related to the haliocytic acids, et cetera, and what is the best that we should use there. Obviously, we had a couple of options on what we do with the water with that system, and we'll still be looking through that.
And this was the item that was brought up at one of our hearings that we had.
Yes.
About that issue that we need to address.
Yeah, and it comes back to that, again, it's because of chlorination of water,
Right.
and it's a byproduct of
Right.
the chlorination system.
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Harmon.
Thank you. Mr. Whitaker, with respect to that, are you referring to the disinfection modification phase 1 and then later on disinfection modification phase 2? Is that pertaining to the haloacetic acids?
Yes,
Both of them are?
both of them are,
All right, thank you.
Yeah, they're big items.
yes.
They will be. Okay, go ahead.
Next is page 58. Southwest 37th, this is phase 2 of the is the 37th Street project, their gauge to Burlingame. And so then again, we're just, and that would, I think we're doing the road project in 2 phases, 15, 16, and so we're following with the water line. 59, now that we're in 16, a lot of these going forward are all related to the master plan. This is the southeast elevated tank, elevated tower. It actually would replace the 29th and California older tower over there. And again, it's part of the new pressure zone there for the east side of that whole master plan that we showed you some weeks back. 30, next page 60, 37th Street, Kentucky to California. Again, that's a transmission, 18-inch transmission line, and again, it's to help in building that network over to the east pressure zone. Next page, 61, Crane. This again is a transmission line, 18 to 24-inch main, and it's again pressure zones, and is part of the improvements needed to allow for the creation of the new east and that southern pressure zone as we're trying to tie that together. 62, water treatment plant rehabilitation program. This is obviously with any major facility, you have to do some rehabilitation of various things. And this is just some what we would call minor systems. We're doing some deficiency, rehabilitation of some filters, some motor control centers, and electrical equipment and mechanical equipment. This is just some upgrades so that we can prolong the life and continue without having to do a major replacement of a system.
Okay.
Page 63 is, as Councilmember Harmon brought up, that's the other half of the halioacidic acid, so it's phase 2. Page 64, Topeka Boulevard, again, this is an 18-inch main, again, another piece of the overall master plan, and it's related to the south pressure zone. Page 65, Indian Hills. This again is basically storage over on the west side of town, which is all part of, again, pulling into the master plan, and just that there's to provide redundancy between the towers over there and to provide especially for fire and protection, etc. 66, booster pump station. There are 9 what we call small booster pump stations that are out in the distribution system of the water. This is just to do some rehabilitation of the pumps, electrical power controls, and like that. Again, this would actually take care of work on all 9 of them and just upgrade them. Page 67, the high service pumping emergency power. This is the main pumps that come out of obviously the city water plant, obviously are very important because they push water out to all of the systems and the towers. This here is the generators we have. The generator we have right now is not capable of running those large pumps. And so we are looking at this, that's why it's out to 18. We are just looking at this as a possibility. Should we add another larger generator to make sure we've got those pumps running in case of a power failure, et cetera, at the plant.
Okay.
Page 68. Again, this is another piece. This is over on the east side, trying to build up that east zone that we know there's some weak areas on. There it's Strait and Seward, and again, it's part of the master plan. And then same thing with 69. This is part of the master plan, and this, again, it's a 18-inch main, and again, it's part of putting that south and east pressure zones together. And then page 70, 41st in California, again, it's part of it's a 16-inch main, and again, it's part of that master plan, and then putting together, again, that east pressure zone. I don't mean to keep saying that, but if you remember, there were a lot of pieces we had to do to get around there to correct those pressure areas on the east side. Same thing with page 71. Again, this is a 24-inch main, and again, it's another piece of that master plan, and again, for the creation of the east and south zones. And then page 72, this is the main pump, it's the service pump and electrical controls. It's upgrading the pumps and some flow meters, valves. Again, it's more of just an upgrade to the existing pump station, again, to prolong the life of that equipment rather than just obviously having to replace the whole system. So it's more of a preventive maintenance and obviously add some more life to the system. Page 73, this again is another section of the 16 to 18-inch main that's related to the master plan. And then the next one, page 74, we're into 2019 now. I think we started, yes. Again, it's another piece, an 18-inch main, and it would again fits into that master plan. And the same thing for page 75, 57th and Wenger. Again, it's a 24-inch main, and it's again to help develop all of that east side and south pressure zones. 76, it's same thing, an 18-inch main and the pressure zones in the master plan. And then page 77, the last one is the west elevated tank. And again, this would be additional storage on the west side of town to provide for fire, et cetera, as we are lacking on that side in storage capacity. So that should end it.
That completes, and you did a fine job of describing all of these. Are there any questions, comments at this point? We have one person who signed to speak on this discussion item, Mr. Ledbetter.
My comments are just related to the stormwater fund, and so they're fairly narrowly focused. And I'm not going to stick around for public comments. I see you have a lot of other conferees, and I'm sure you'll appreciate that. I have continued to ask questions about this stormwater fund over the last couple of years. And it appears that back in '08, we put a lot of money from stormwater into a flood levee protection system under the idea that we were going to use that fairly quick and it was going to happen, and neither happened. We haven't repaired the levee system, which was the intent of the money was going to be matched by Washington. Washington's got its own problems, so that solution never came. And yet the money continues to be collected, especially off commercial properties, some of which I represent as a lawyer. And this money continues to pile up and not be used. And yet when you look at the clear language of the ordinance, there's nothing in it that says it can be used for flood protection or levees. I'm just putting this on the record that there is still that concern out there. I don't think the problem's going to go away. Our stormwater rates on our commercial properties are much higher than many other cities. I think it's like twice as much as Wichita on commercial buildings. If you're going to try to help economic development, you really need to start thinking about these small businesses that are being hit so hard by these rates. And it's really only small businesses that are growing any jobs, if any jobs are being created. So I continue to see this stormwater issue as a problem, and my client does not feel like his problems have been resolved. So thank you.
Thank you. No questions on that. That completes our discussion on the capital improvement program. we will take a 10-minute break and let's try reassemble at 9 o'clock.
No, that's fine, thank you. Yeah, well, and I was trying to phrase it affirmatively rather than negatively, but it went fine. It went fine, appreciate it. You know, partly this is just getting the message out, so. No, it was just a presentation.